The humble girl was in the theater until the director shouted, "I need a pianist." Emily Johnson tightened her grip on the damp cloth between her small hands when she heard the shouts coming from the main stage. At 13, she knew every corner of that theater in Boston, where she had been accompanying her mother Grace in her cleaning work for over 2 years. "My God, what are we going to do now?" yelled the director, Richard Thornton, an elegant man in his early 50s, pacing back and forth across the stage. "The lead pianist has fainted. The show starts in 40 minutes. Emily stopped scrubbing the red velvet armchairs and looked up. For the first time in months, she felt her heart race with something other than the fear of being discovered where she shouldn't be. She knew how to play the piano, not perfectly, but she knew. "Grace," Richard shouted to Emily's mother, who was cleaning the side aisles. "Do you know anyone who plays the piano?" "Anyone?" Her mother came running, her graying hair escaping from the scarf tied around her head. "No, sir, I'm sorry. I only know simple folks like us." It was then that Emily felt something stir inside her chest, a strange feeling, as if a voice whispered that this was her moment. Without thinking it through, she raised her right hand in the air. "I know how to play," she said quietly. The director didn't even look in her direction. He kept pacing nervously, talking to himself about the loss, about the critics who would be in the audience that night, about his reputation that would be ruined. "I know how to play the piano," repeated Emily, louder this time. Richard stopped and turned his face toward the voice. When he saw the skinny girl in simple clothes and worn-out sneakers, he let out a bitter laugh. "Very funny. Get back to your work." "Richard," murmured Grace, pulling her daughter by the arm, "I'm sorry about the girl. She doesn't know what she's saying." But Emily broke free from her mother and took a few steps toward the stage. "I learned at the Hope Village Community Center. I've been playing for 4 years." The director stopped laughing. He looked the girl up and down, noticing for the first time the determination in her eyes. "Community center?" he asked, with a mixture of disdain and curiosity in his voice. "Yes, sir. Teacher Margaret taught me. She said I had a knack for it." Richard looked at his golden wristwatch. 37 minutes until the show started. The theater was almost full. Important people were waiting outside, including the famous music critic Harold Williams, who could make or destroy any artist's reputation with a single review. "Mother," whispered Emily, "trust me." Grace looked at her daughter with eyes full of tears. She knew that girl better than anyone. She knew Emily didn't lie, but she also knew their world was very different from that lit-up stage. "Mr. Richard," said Grace, "if my daughter says she knows how, it's because she does. She has never lied in her life." The director sighed deeply. He was between a rock and a hard place. Canceling the show would be a financial and artistic disaster. Trying it with an unknown girl could be even worse. "What kind of music do you know how to play?" he finally asked. Emily took a deep breath. She knew this was the most important moment of her life. Classical, Chopin, Bach, Beethoven, and some American ones too, Gershwin, Copland. The musicians from the orchestra, who had gathered to listen to the conversation, exchanged skeptical glances. One of them, the violinist Robert, a 40-year-old man with a graying mustache, shook his head negatively. "Richard, this is madness. Today's piece is extremely difficult. It took me 6 months to memorize my part." "And what's the alternative, Robert?" retorted the director, already showing signs of desperation. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing." Emily moved closer to the stage. The bright lights made her eyes sting, but she didn't back away. "May I try? Just for a few minutes?" Richard looked at his watch again. 34 minutes. "All right," he said, more to himself than to her. "But if you can't do it, we don't have any more time to look for someone else. The show will be cancelled." Emily nodded and climbed the side steps leading to the stage. Her legs were trembling, but her feet seemed to know exactly where to step. When she reached the black grand piano, she ran her hand over the smooth, shiny surface. It was very different from the out-of-tune upright piano at the community center. "What piece are you playing?" she asked. Liszt's Piano Concerto No. 1 in E-flat major, replied Robert, still skeptical. Do you know it? Emily's heart almost stopped. She did know it. It was one of the most difficult pieces her teacher Grace had ever tried to teach her. Emily had never managed to play it completely. She always got stuck on the faster passages. I know it, she lied, sitting on the piano bench. She adjusted the bench height and placed her hands on the keys. They were cold, just like her fingers. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her teacher Grace's words. Emily, music doesn't come from your hands. It comes from your heart. She started slowly, with the first notes of the concerto. The sounds coming from the piano were much richer and clearer than anything she had ever heard before. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was and let herself be carried away by the melody. The orchestra remained silent, watching. Richard stopped pacing and paid attention. Emily's mother, who had moved closer to the front rows of the audience, held her hands to her chest. But when she reached the first difficult passage, Emily hesitated. Her fingers got tangled, and she played a few wrong notes in a row. She stopped immediately, her face red with shame. I'm sorry, she murmured. I knew it, said Robert, shaking his head. Richard, let's cancel while there's still time. But the director had noticed something in the girl's performance. Something about the way she played, even when making mistakes, had a different feeling, a raw emotion that he rarely saw in professional pianists. Try again, he said, more slowly this time. Emily looked at him, surprised. Sir? Play it as you know it, not as you think you should. She nodded and started over. This time, when she reached the difficult passages, she slowed the tempo and simplified some parts, but kept the essence of the music. It wasn't the perfect execution that Liszt had composed, but it had something unique. When she finished the first part, the silence in the theatre was absolute. Even the staff had stopped working to listen. Interesting, murmured a woman's voice from the main entrance. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was an elegant woman, about 65 years old, with impeccably styled white hair and expensive clothes. Emily didn't know her, but from the way everyone stopped and stood with respect, she knew this was someone important. Mrs. Catherine, said Richard, visibly nervous, I didn't know you had arrived. Catherine Phillips was the owner of the theatre and one of the most influential people in the cultural scene of Boston. She had been a professional pianist in her youth, before inheriting the family business. Now, at 65, she rarely appeared at the theatre, preferring to manage everything from a distance. I arrived a few minutes ago, she said, walking slowly through the audience until she was closer to the stage, and I heard this interesting interpretation of the Liszt. Emily felt a chill in her stomach. She didn't know if interesting was good or bad. Mrs. Catherine, began Richard, we had a problem with the lead pianist and... I heard the explanation, interrupted the lady, without taking her eyes off Emily. Young lady, what is your name? Emily Johnson, ma'am. Emily, do you know who I am? I imagine you are the owner of the theatre. Catherine smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Among other things, yes. Where did you learn to play? At the Hope Village Community Centre, ma'am, with teacher Margaret. Margaret Wilson? Emily nodded, surprised that the elegant lady knew her teacher. Catherine was silent for a few seconds, as if processing important information. Then she looked at Richard. How many minutes do we have? 28, Mrs. Catherine. Emily, said the woman, turning her attention back to the girl, do you have the courage to play for a full house? Emily's heart beat so hard she was afraid everyone could hear it. Yes, ma'am, I do. Then let's do a test. Play the entire piece for me now. Don't worry about mistakes. Focus on telling a story through the music. Emily glanced quickly at her mother, who was pale in the front rows. Grace nodded encouragingly, even with tears in her eyes. The girl took a deep breath and started again. This time she tried to imagine she was telling her own story through the keys. The difficult childhood in Hope Village, the afternoons at the community centre as her only escape from a harsh reality, the secret dreams she had never told anyone. When she reached the most difficult parts, she didn't try to impress with speed or perfect technique. Instead, she put so much emotion into every note that even the most experienced musicians felt a shiver. During the 16 minutes her performance lasted, Emily forgot where she was. She forgot the audience, the lights, the nervousness. There was only her and the music, talking like old friends. When the last note echoed through the theatre, the silence lasted almost half a minute. Catherine was the first to speak. "Richard, she plays in the show tonight." "But Mrs. Catherine," protested Robert, "she's just a child and she has more soul in her little finger than many professional pianists have in their entire body," interrupted Catherine firmly. "Besides, I am the one who decides who plays in my theatre." Richard looked at his watch once more. 20 minutes to start. "It's decided then. Emily, do you have any more formal clothes?" The girl looked at her simple clothes and shook her head no. "I'll take care of this," said Catherine. "Grace, isn't it?" Emily's mother approached timidly. "Yes, ma'am. Your daughter has exceptional talent. Today she will play, and we will provide everything she needs." In the following minutes the theatre became a whirlwind of activity. Catherine called her personal assistant, who brought a simple yet elegant navy blue dress that would fit Emily perfectly. Black flat shoes were found in the theatre's wardrobe. Grace helped her daughter change in one of the dressing rooms, her hands shaking more than Emily's own. "My daughter," she said, fixing the girl's brown hair. "Are you sure about this?" "I am, Mum. It's as if I had prepared my whole life for this moment without knowing it. And if you make a mistake, if I make a mistake, at least I'll make a mistake trying to fulfill a dream." Grace hugged her daughter tightly. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you today." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears as she remembered her grandmother Martha, who had passed away 2 years before. She was the one who always said that Emily had blessed fingers for music. An employee knocked on the dressing room door. 5 minutes to start." Emily and her mother walked together to the sides of the stage. The girl could hear the murmur of the full audience on the other side of the curtains. Her stomach was churning, but strangely she felt more alive than ever. "Emily," called Catherine, approaching, "before you go in, I need to tell you something about your teacher, Margaret." The girl looked at the woman, curious. "Margaret Wilson was one of my best students many years ago, an exceptional pianist who chose to leave her career to teach in underprivileged communities. She always told me about a special student she had discovered, but never gave a name." Emily's heart raced. "You know Teacher Margaret? I've known her for over 20 years, and now I understand why she always spoke with such pride about this mysterious student." Richard appeared beside them. "It's time." Emily took one last look at her mother, who whispered, "I love you, my daughter." "I love you too, Mom." The girl walked to the center of the stage. The bright lights blinded her for a few seconds, but when her vision adjusted, she saw hundreds of faces looking at her. At the back of the audience, she could make out some acquaintances from Hope Village who worked at the theatre as security guards and ticket takers. They looked as surprised as they were proud. She sat on the piano bench and adjusted her position. She looked at Robert, who gave her an encouraging nod. He had completely changed his attitude after hearing her play backstage. "Good evening," Richard said into the microphone. "Due to last-minute circumstances, we have a change in our program. The young Emily Johnson will accompany us on piano tonight." A murmur went through the audience. Some people looked confused, others curious. Emily heard someone comment, "Who is this girl? I've never heard of her." The conductor raised his baton and looked at Emily. She nodded, indicating she was ready. The orchestra's first notes echoed through the theatre, and Emily felt as if she were being transported to another world. When her entrance came, she took a deep breath and began to play. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we are just starting out, now continuing. This time, playing in front of the audience felt natural. It was as if all those afternoons practicing at the community center, all the times she had imagined being in a grand theater, had been preparation for this moment. Her interpretation of the Liszt concerto was not technically perfect. Some passages she simplified, others she played slower than the original tempo. But there was an emotional honesty in her music that touched the heart of every person in the audience. In the third row, the critic Harold Williams was taking quick notes in a small notebook. He had come expecting to hear the headline Pianist, who was internationally recognized. Instead, he was witnessing something completely unexpected. In the fifth row, the Boston University music professor, Dr. Charles Peterson, had stopped fiddling with his phone and was completely absorbed in the performance. He had heard that concerto hundreds of times, but never like this. In the VIP box, two executives from New York who had come to Boston to evaluate new musical talents exchanged impressed looks. But the one who was most emotional was Grace, who was crying discreetly at the side of the stage. She remembered when Emily was little and would spend hours pretending to play piano on an old table, pretending the wood grain were keys. When Emily reached the end of the first part of the concerto, the applause was polite, but she could feel she had won over at least part of the audience. During the brief musical interlude, she quickly glanced at Catherine, who was in the front row, and nodded encouragingly. The second part of the concerto was even more challenging. There was a passage that Emily had never been able to play correctly, not even at the community center. When she reached that part, for a split second, she considered trying to simplify it as she had done before. But then she remembered her grandmother Martha's words. "Emily, when you don't know the way, let your heart guide you." Instead of simplifying, she closed her eyes and let her fingers move instinctively. To her own surprise, she managed to play the difficult passage almost perfectly, not exactly as Liszt had composed it, but in a way that worked and sounded beautiful. The conductor, who knew every note of that score, was impressed. Emily had improvised a creative solution for one of the piece's most complex passages. When the concert ended, the silence lasted a few seconds that seemed like an eternity to Emily. Then one person started to applaud, then another, and within seconds the entire theatre erupted in applause. Emily stood up and took a simple bow, just as her teacher Margaret had taught her. When she looked at the audience, she saw that many people were standing. Even some of the more experienced musicians in the orchestra were applauding enthusiastically. But the most moving moment was when she saw her mother running down the theatre's side aisle, with tears streaming down her face and a smile she had never seen before. After the performance, Emily was surrounded by people backstage. Many wanted to meet her, others offered business cards, some talked about future opportunities. "Emily," called Harold Williams, the music critic, "may I speak with you?" The girl approached timidly. She had recognized the man, because his photo always appeared in the local newspaper. "That was one of the most interesting performances I have witnessed this year," he said. "Do you have plans to pursue a musical career?" Emily looked at her mother before answering. "I never thought of it as a real possibility, sir." "You should. You have a natural talent that is rare to see." While they were talking, Catherine approached with a serious expression on her face. "Harold, may I speak with Emily alone?" The critic discreetly stepped away, and Catherine led Emily to a more private corner backstage. "Emily, I need to tell you something important about your teacher, Margaret, and about how you came to study with her." The girl felt a chill in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "Margaret never told me your name, but she always spoke to me about a special student she had discovered by chance. She said this girl had exceptional talent, but was living in difficult conditions." Catherine paused, as if carefully choosing her words. "What you don't know is that I was the one who paid for your lessons at the community center. Margaret asked for my help for a student who couldn't afford to pay, and I agreed without even knowing who it was." Emily was speechless. "You paid for my lessons?" "For the last 3 years, yes. Margaret always said you were worth every penny, that you had the potential to play on the world's greatest stages. Now I understand why she insisted so much." Tears began to stream down Emily's face. All these years, she had thought the lessons were free, part of a social program at the community center. "Why did you do this?" "Because I believe talent should not be wasted because of the circumstances of one's birth, and because Margaret had never asked me for anything like that before." Grace, who had noticed the serious conversation, approached with concern. "Is everything all right?" Catherine smiled at her. "Everything is fine, Grace. Your daughter has just discovered she has a fairy godmother." In the days following the performance, Emily's life changed completely. Harold Williams's review in the local newspaper was extremely positive, highlighting not only the girl's talent, but also her story of overcoming adversity. Professor Charles Peterson from the university sought out Catherine, interested in offering free lessons to Emily. Two businessmen from New York called offering recording contracts. But the most significant change came when Catherine called Emily and Grace in for a meeting in her office at the theatre. "Emily," she said, "I have a proposal for you and your mother." The two exchanged nervous glances. "I would like Emily to study music professionally. I am willing to cover all expenses, private lessons with the best teachers, participation in master classes, even studies abroad if necessary." Grace nearly fainted. "Mrs. Phillips, that is incredibly generous, but I cannot accept so much help." "Actually, you can, and I will explain why." Catherine stood up and went to a bookshelf filled with old photographs. She picked up a black and white photo showing a young woman playing the piano. "This is me at 16, playing on this very stage. I had talent, opportunities, family, money, but I didn't have what Emily has." "What do I have?" asked the girl, curious. "Soul. You play with your heart, not just your fingers. That can't be taught, it's a gift." Catherine sat back down. "I abandoned my music career at 22 to take over the family business. I've never regretted it, but I've always wondered how far I could have gone. When I heard you play, I saw the answer." "How so?" "I saw that true talent finds a way to flourish, even under the most difficult conditions. And I saw that when someone plays with such love for music, they deserve to have every opportunity possible." Grace was silent, taking it all in. "But there is one condition," Catherine continued. "Emily must continue living with you, continue attending her regular school, and continue visiting the community center to teach other children." "Why?" asked Emily. "Because I don't want you to forget where you came from. What makes your music special is its connection to real life, to the hardships and joys of ordinary people. If you lose that, you'll become just another technically perfect pianist, but without a soul." Emily looked at her mother, who had tears in her eyes. "Mom, what do you think?" "I think your grandmother Martha is smiling down from heaven," Grace replied. 3 months later, Emily was already taking lessons 3 times a week with Professor Charles. Once a week, she went to the theatre to practice on the main piano. And every Saturday morning, she taught piano to children at the Hope Village Community Center. Her former teacher, Margaret, who had cried with pride when she learned all that had happened, attended Emily's lessons whenever she could. "You have no idea how proud I feel," she said one Saturday afternoon, watching Emily teach a 7-year-old girl. "Mrs. Wilson, can I ask you something?" Emily said during a break. "Of course." "Why did you never tell me that the lessons were paid for by Mrs. Phillips?" Margaret smiled. "Because I knew that if you found out you'd be too worried to focus on the music, and also because I wanted you to understand the value of things through your own effort, not through other people's money." "And you? Why did you leave your career to teach here?" "Because I discovered that my greatest talent wasn't playing the piano, but teaching others to play. Every student who can make music is like I'm playing through them." At that moment, Emily understood why Catherine had insisted she continue teaching at the community center. She was learning that sharing knowledge was just as important as acquiring it. 1 year after her first performance, Emily got her second big opportunity. A classical music festival in New York was looking for young talents to perform alongside internationally recognized musicians. Catherine received the invitation and called Emily to talk. "It's a great opportunity," she said, "but the decision is yours." "I'll accept," Emily replied without hesitation. "Are you sure? It will be in New York, far from your family, for 2 weeks." "I'm sure, but I'd like to ask for one thing." "Go ahead." "I want my mother and Mrs. Margaret to come with me." Catherine smiled. "I've already arranged tickets and accommodation for them too." During the festival in New York, Emily played for an audience even larger and more demanding than the one at the theatre in Boston. Her performance was so remarkable that she received an invitation to play with the New York State Symphony Orchestra. But the most exciting moment of the festival wasn't her solo performance. It was when she played a duet with a famous 60-year-old pianist from the United Kingdom named Arthur Collins. Arthur had become interested in Emily after hearing her play alone. During rehearsals, he was impressed not only with her talent, but with her musical maturity. "Emily," he said after the final rehearsal, "you have something very rare." "What is it?" "The ability to make people feel that the music is being played especially for them. That is a gift that cannot be taught." During the duet on stage, Emily felt as if she were having a musical conversation with Arthur. They complemented each other perfectly, each respecting the other's space, but creating together something greater than their individual performances. The audience gave a standing ovation at the end, applauding for more than 5 minutes. Several people were crying, including Grace, who was in the front row along with Margaret. After the show, Arthur made an unexpected proposal. "Emily, I would like you to consider studying with me in the United Kingdom for a few weeks each year. I can teach you techniques I've learned over my 40-year career." The girl fell silent, processing the offer. "It's a great honor, Mr. Arthur. But may I speak with my mother first?" "Of course. And you can just call me Arthur." That night at the hotel, Emily talked at length with Grace and Margaret about the proposal. "It's a unique opportunity," said Margaret. "Arthur is considered one of the best pianists in the world." "But it would mean being away from you," said Emily, worried. "My daughter," Grace replied. "I don't want you to miss opportunities because of me. If it's important for your growth, you should go." "But what about the community center? The children I'm teaching?" "They'll be there when you return, and you'll come back even better to teach them." 2 days later, Emily accepted Arthur's proposal, but with conditions. "I accept studying with you, but only during school vacations, and I want to continue teaching at the community center when I'm in Boston." Arthur smiled. "Exactly what I would expect from someone with your maturity. I accept your conditions." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video, and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. Over the next 2 years, Emily divided her time between her regular studies in Boston, lessons with Professor Charles, teaching with Margaret at the community center, and study sessions with Arthur in the United Kingdom. Each experience transformed her in a different way. With Charles, she learned advanced technique and music theory. With Margaret, she maintained her connection to her roots and the love of music as a form of expression. With Arthur, she learned about high-level performance and how to convey emotion to large audiences. But it was during one of her classes at the community center that Emily discovered her true calling. She was teaching a group of 8 children, aged between 7 and 14. One of them, a 9-year-old boy named Jack, had lost hearing in one ear due to a poorly treated infection. "Professor Emily," said Jack after a class, "I'm never going to be able to play properly, am I?" Emily's heart tightened. "Why do you think that?" "'Cause I don't hear properly. Sometimes I miss the notes." Emily knelt down to the boy's height. "Jack, do you want me to tell you a secret?" The boy nodded. "Music isn't just in what we hear. It's also in what we feel. You can feel the vibration of the keys. You can feel the rhythm in your body." She placed Jack's hand on the piano. "Play any note." Jack played a C. "Do you feel the vibration in your hand?" "I do." "That vibration is the music happening. Now play a sequence of notes and feel how the vibrations change." Jack followed the instruction, and for the first time since he had started lessons, he smiled while playing. "I can really feel it." From that day on, Emily developed a special method to teach Jack, focusing on both the auditory and tactile aspects of music. Within a few months, the boy was playing simple pieces with more expression than many children with perfect hearing. The experience with Jack made Emily realize that she wanted to be not just a pianist but also a music educator. She began to study teaching methods adapted for children with different needs. Catherine, who closely followed Emily's development, was impressed by this new side of her. "You are becoming a complete person," she said during one of their monthly conversations. "Not just a musician, but an educator." "It's just that I've discovered that teaching makes me as happy as playing," replied Emily, now 16 years old. "And doesn't that interfere with your career as a soloist?" "On the contrary, the more I teach, the better I understand music. And the better I understand music, the better I can play it." At that moment, Catherine made a decision that would completely change the future course. "Emily, I have a different proposal for you." Tell me, how about we transform the community center into a more structured music school? With more instruments, more teachers, more students? Emily's eyes lit up. That would be amazing, but how? I have some business friends who are interested in investing in social projects. If we can put together a well-structured project, we might get funding to expand the center. During the following months, Emily, Catherine, Margaret, and Grace worked together on developing the project. Emily used everything she had learned about music education from Jack and other children to create an innovative methodology. The project was presented to a group of investors in Boston. Emily, despite her nervousness, gave a brilliant presentation explaining not only the technical aspects, but also speaking about the importance of music in children's development. Music doesn't just transform the person who plays, she told the investors. It transforms entire families, entire communities. When a child learns music, they take it home, they share it with siblings, parents, neighbors. One of the investors, a 62-year-old businessman named William Parker, became particularly interested. Emily, do you have data on the impact the current center has already had on the community? Yes, sir, I do. In the last 3 years, 15 children who studied there have gotten scholarships to better schools. 8 have gotten jobs related to music in churches and events, and 3 have been accepted into college programs. Impressive. And what would be the impact of the expansion? We could serve 10 times more children. And not just piano, but guitar, flute, percussion. We could also offer singing lessons and choir formation. William exchanged looks with the other investors. We are interested in the project, he said finally, but on one condition. Emily's heart raced. What is it? You must be the pedagogical director of the new school, even if that means adjusting your career as a soloist. Emily was silent for a few seconds. It was an important decision that would affect her entire future. May I have a few days to think about it? Of course. That night, Emily talked at length with her mother. Mom, what do you think I should do? My daughter, the decision is yours, but may I give you some advice? Please do. Ask your heart which of the 2 options would make you happier 10 years from now. Emily spent the whole night thinking. She imagined herself as a famous pianist, playing in the best theaters in the world. Then she imagined herself as the school director, seeing hundreds of children discovering a love for music. The next morning, she already knew her answer. 2 days later, she called William. I accept being the pedagogical director, but with a few conditions. Go on. I want Mrs. Margaret to be the general coordinator. I want my mother to work in the school's administration, and I want to keep my lessons with Mr. Charles and with Arthur to continue developing as a musician. I accept all the conditions. When can we start? 6 months later, the Hope Village Music School was inaugurated in a new building, specially constructed to serve 200 children. It had 10 classrooms, a performance hall, a music library, and high-quality instruments. On Inauguration Day, Emily played a special piece she had composed for the occasion. It was a piece of music that told the story of her own journey, from the first time she played the broken piano at the community center, until that very moment. The audience was packed. Catherine was in the front row, next to Grace and Margaret. Mr. Charles was there, as was Arthur, who had come specially from the United Kingdom for the event. Harold Williams, the music critic, had also attended. But the people who moved Emily the most were the children from the community, including Jack, who now played complex pieces despite his hearing difficulty. When she finished playing, Emily approached the microphone. 4 years ago, I was just a girl who dreamed of playing the piano. Today, I am a young woman who discovered that her greatest talent is not in her hands, but in her ability to inspire other people to discover their own talents. She paused, looking at the audience. This school is not just a place to learn music. It is a place where dreams come true, where children discover that it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you want to go. The applause was long and emotional. Several people were crying, including some of the investors who had made the project possible. After the ceremony, Catherine approached Emily. You made the right choice, she said. How can you be sure? Because I saw you playing today. I've never seen you play with so much passion and purpose. It's just that I finally understood what my true mission is, replied Emily. What is it? It's not about being the best pianist in the world. It's about helping other people discover that they can be too. In the following months, the school grew quickly. The children studying there began to perform at events around the city. A choir was formed and began singing in churches and community celebrations. Emily continued to play professionally, but now her performances had a different purpose. Instead of seeking only personal recognition, she played to raise funds for the school and to inspire other communities to create their own music projects. During a performance in Philadelphia, she met a businesswoman named Jennifer, who became interested in replicating the school's model in other cities. "Emily, have you ever thought about expanding this project to other regions?" Jennifer asked after the show. "I have thought about it, but we are still consolidating the first school." "How about we start planning? I know investors in Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. Who would be interested?" The idea of expanding the project excited Emily Johnson, but it also worried her. Would it be possible to maintain the quality and personal touch in a larger network of schools? She decided to talk with her mentor, Arthur Collins, who was in Boston for a series of presentations. "Arthur, how would you go about expanding a project without losing its essence?" "Good question. In my experience, the key is to thoroughly train the people who will lead each new unit. They need to understand not just the methods, but the philosophy behind the project." "And how do you do that?" "By creating a training program for new educators. You would teach not only musical techniques, but also your teaching methodology and your vision about music's role in social transformation." The idea made sense to Emily. In the following months, she developed a training course for music educators based on her experience in Hope Village. The first group of students in the course included 15 music teachers from various parts of the Northeast. During 3 intensive months, Emily shared everything she had learned about teaching music, especially to children from underprivileged communities. "Music is not a privilege," she would say during the classes. "It is a right that all children should have access to." One of the course students, named Michelle, was from a small town in rural Georgia. "Professor Emily," she said during one class, "in my town we don't even have instruments. How can I apply these methods?" "Michelle, do you remember how I started? Practicing on a broken piano. Sometimes limitations force us to be more creative." Emily taught techniques for improvising instruments, for making the most of limited resources, and for involving the local community in supporting the music project. At the end of the course, the 15 educators returned to their cities with concrete plans to implement similar projects. Michelle managed to convince her town's council to provide a public space and raised funds in the community to buy used instruments. 2 years later, there were already 5 schools in the network operating in different cities across the Northeast. Emily traveled regularly to supervise and support the local educators. During one of these trips to Michelle's school in rural Georgia, Emily witnessed something that moved her deeply. A 12-year-old girl named Bethany was playing a song on the guitar for a group of elderly people in the town square. The music was simple, but the expression on the faces of the people listening was one of pure joy. "Michelle," Emily asked, "who is that girl?" "That's Bethany. She started studying with us a year ago. Now she plays at nursing homes all over town every week." "And she does this because you asked her to?" "No, it was her own idea. She said she wanted to use music to cheer up the older people." In that moment, Emily realized the project had become something much bigger than she had imagined. She wasn't just teaching music to children. She was creating a generation of young people who understood the transformative power of music and wanted to use it to improve their communities. When she returned to Boston, she told the story to Catherine. "Do you realize what you've created?" the older woman asked. "What?" "A movement, a way of thinking about music and education that is spreading naturally." "I never thought of it that way." "You should, because now you have an even greater responsibility." That night, Emily lay awake, thinking about Catherine's words. It was true the project had grown beyond her initial expectations, but was she ready for the responsibilities that came with it? The next day, she received an unexpected call. It was from the Department of Arts and Culture, inviting her to a meeting in Washington, D.C. "Miss Emily," said the employee on the phone, The secretary would like to meet your work personally. There is interest in including your methodology in the public policies for music education. Emily was speechless. The possibility of influencing public policies meant the method could reach thousands of children across the country. 2 weeks later, she was in Washington, D.C., presenting her project to a group of advisors from the department. Emily, now 19 years old, spoke with the confidence of someone who had dedicated the last few years to perfecting her methodology. "What makes your method different from traditional music education programs?" asked one of the advisors. "3 main elements," Emily replied. "First, adaptability. Our method works with limited resources and can be adjusted for different realities. Second, inclusion. We serve children with different needs and abilities. Third, community impact. We don't just train musicians, but young people who use music as a tool for social transformation. And what are the practical results? In the 5 schools in our network, we have a 95% school retention rate among participating students. The average grades in all subjects have increased by 30%, and 78% of the students have developed their own musical projects in their communities. The numbers impress the department staff. At the end of the presentation, the secretary himself appeared to meet Emily. "Miss Johnson," he said, "your work is exactly the kind of initiative the country needs. I would like you to consider coordinating a national pilot project. How so? Implement your methodology in 50 public schools in different regions of the country. If the results are positive, we will expand it to the entire educational system." Emily felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. It was the opportunity to reach thousands of children, but also an enormous challenge. "May I think about it and give you an answer in a few weeks?" "Of course, but we await your decision eagerly." On the plane back to Boston, Emily thought about the entire journey she had taken. 5 years earlier, she was just a humble girl who dreamed of playing the piano. Now she had the opportunity to influence the music education of an entire country. But she also thought of Catherine's words about not forgetting her origins. Would it be possible to maintain the project's essence on such a large scale? When she got home, she found her mother waiting in the living room. "So, how was the meeting?" Emily told Grace everything, who listened silently with a proud expression. "My daughter," she said when Emily finished, "do you remember what you used to tell me when you were little?" "What?" "That you wanted to play the piano for the whole world to hear. Well, it seems your wish is coming true, only in a much more beautiful way than you imagined." "How so?" "You're not just playing for the world to hear, you're teaching the world to play along with you." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of overcoming and transformation. Do you believe that music really has this power to change lives? Leave your opinion in the comments and share with us your own experiences with music. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one.